Karl Heinrich Ulrichs fought for gay rights in 19th century Germany. His 12 books on gay rights are studies in law, sociology, and anthropology. Now that his works have been translated, his story can be told. Karl Heinrich Ulrichs was born in Westerfeld, East Friesland, in the northern German region on August 28, 1825. His father was a civil engineer, and his mother was a homemaker. He lived with his two sisters in a big house in the countryside. They were Lutherans. Karl was 10 when his father died, and this marked the end of his happy childhood. He attended high school in Detmold and Celle. Karl was an excellent student. Greco-Roman art especially interested him. He discovered the male form attracted him. Later, the gay Greek and Roman warriors became significant in his studies. Harmodius and Aristogiton, Epaminondas and Caphisodorus. In the 1840s, he studied law at the universities of Göttingen and Berlin. In the Prussian capital of Berlin, the demonstrations for a constitutional government instructed Karl in political activism. Later, Karl was to have his own clashes with the Prussians. One of his sisters told Karl she thought he became gay in Berlin. Karl knew Berlin as the gay capital, but he was gay long before that, he told her. He passed the bar and became a government lawyer. He hated his job and quit when his mother died in 1857. He made his living as a secretary and as a journalist in Frankfurt. He wrote publications on the postal rights of one of the German princes. When Karl made the first attempt to have something gay printed in the major publication which employed him, his life took a different turn. In 1862, Karl came out to his relatives. In one letter, he told them he intended to devote his life writing about gay rights. His family disapproved, so he used a pseudonym. He coined the word earning for gay because the only words available were vice, sodomy, and crime against nature. The immediate product of his intentions were 5 books. He believed that sexuality was not determined by the genitals. The first scientific treatment of homosexuality began with Karl's theories. He stated that nature, and not the person, determines sexual orientation. In April 1864, the Saxony police raided his publisher and confiscated more than 1,000 copies of Windex and Inclusa being sold at Karl's publisher. Ulrichs fought the ban and got it lifted in May. Ulrichs marked May 1864 as the first stage of Our Issue. The The Surgeon General of Germany at that time wrote to Karl. Although he could not argue with Karl's theories, he still thought homosexuality was immoral. At this time, Karl fell in love. The object was a hussar, a light-armed cavalryman named Eberhard. Karl's love inspired him to write poetry as well as his studies. All Karl's poetry reflects the current theme of the sadness of his inability to fill his heart's desires. For that reason, his poems carry titles such as I Thirst, I Was Sad, Grieving, and Farewell. In 1866, Karl's antagonist was Otto von Bismarck. He was called the Iron Chancellor. He was a Prussian prince who unified Germany at the expense of civil rights. Karl was to find out. Prussian soldiers arrived at Karl's home in Burgdorf. Karl had held meetings urging the people to resist the Prussian invasion of Hanover. The soldiers took him to prison at the Prussian fort at Minden. He remained there almost a year. When the Prussian anti-gay law, paragraph 175, was instituted in Hanover, Karl moved to Bavaria. There, at the Odeon Theater, he made a speech before the Association of German Jurists, of which he was a member. He demanded that they abolish paragraph 175. He said that law drove many men to suicide and poisoned the happiness of many innocent people. He later wrote that he had to speak out and come out, just as Heinrich Ulrichs had done 33 years before him. Ulrichs had written, "Speak or be judged a coward." Karl said he was proud when on August 27, 1867, he dealt the initial blow to the hydra of public contempt. The reaction of the audience was tempestuous. On his right and in the front, he heard them call for adjournment. Karl, fearful for his life, began to leave the stage. But those on his left called, "No, no, continue, continue." However, Karl was heckled so much he had to step down. At the Glass Palace, they held their reception. Many members ignored Karl, while others openly spoke to him. Later that day, the group toured a nearby lake. By the members' reaction, Karl knew he had given them food for thought. Then, when Bavaria went over to Prussia, Karl took up his residence in Stuttgart in the Kingdom of Württemberg. In the 1870s were his poetic years. He wrote scores of epigrams and poetic sculptures, as he called them. He wrote a collection of student songs, 2 of which received honorary diplomas. The gay writings of the late 1870s disturbed Karl. In critical arrows, he protested against Krafft Ebing and Karl Westphal, who were portraying gay people as clinically diseased. Also upsetting to Karl was the military union of Austria with Prussia in 1879. Karl decided to leave Germany, never again to return. Like a breath of fresh air, the Italian landscape refreshed Karl. The poem To My Little Bee details his journey south. In 1883, he arrived in L'Aquila. He stayed for a time in the Palazzo Franchi, an 18th century tenement house. He loved to take walks in the chestnut tree groves. He was especially attracted to the magnificent mountains of the Abruzzo region. In L'Aquila, he wrote stories in German and taught languages. Upon the death in 1886 of King Ludwig II of Bavaria, Karl wrote a set of poetical songs in Latin. Karl's greatest contribution during this stage was his newspaper Alaude, or Larks. For 6 years he gave news on local happenings such as storms and earthquakes. He reported on the dedication of monuments and the astrological events in the night sky. His most significant visitor at this time was the British author John Addington Symonds. Symonds' young traveling companion was appalled at Karl's poverty. But Symonds told him Karl was the man he most admired in all of Europe. They toured the area while discussing inverted sexuality, to use Symonds' words. Symonds even used Karl's theories in one of his writings. Karl lost his apartment in a fire and was rescued by the Marquis Niccolo Persichetti, an historian and archaeologist. Persichetti gave him a place to stay and became Karl's patron and intimate friend until Karl's death. Karl died of kidney failure on July 14, 1895. Persichetti had him buried beside the family mausoleum. He also gave the eulogy and memorialized Karl in a publication of various incidental writings associated with Karl. Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, one of our first pioneers.